Hello folks, Sergey Metelsky here from BlenderUs.com, and it's this time of the year, it's holiday season, so I guess it's time to create some Christmas related tutorials. And in this tutorial, in two parts, I am going to show you how to create this flexible Christmas light rig with animation nodes. It's fully dynamic and procedural. You can change the number of light bulbs, you can change its shape, as you can see. You can change its scale or randomness of its rotation. And you can even change an input geometry on the fly. X letter. Let me hide our Suzanne and just move it around. And as you can see, it's fully dynamic. I'm going to break it down really fast for you to know what essential steps you have to perform. So we're going to have to create a wire geometry, kind of guide geometry, which is essentially a spiral shrink-wrapped around our reference geometry. Then we're going to have to create a curve guide for our actual geometry of our wire. And then we have to create a light bulb's geometry and distribute it along our spline. So without further ado, let's get started with a fresh new file. We're going to delete everything. And needless to say, of course, you obviously need an animation nodes add-on enabled. I'm using Blender 2.79b and Animation Nodes 2.0. And I know Blender 2.8 is kind of a hot topic at the moment, and there's already a test build of animation nodes for Blender 2.8, but it's really unpolished and unstable in certain areas. So, and I just don't want you guys to see me constantly crashing and relaunching Blender 2.8. So we're going to stick with Blender 2.7, good old 2.7 for this tutorial. And if you want to recreate this setup in Blender 2.8, feel free to do it. It's pretty much the same. So we're going to start with creating some node trees in our animation nodes mode. So this is going to be main. We're going to need groups and loops. And this is just my thing, my routine. I'm always, separate subprograms from our main logic. You can, build everything in one tree, but I just find it more convenient to separate subgroups. So we're going to start with creating a group subprogram, which is actually generate our spiral geometry. And this is essential thing to understand, that you can actually create new geometry with animation nodes, even without dedicated kind of a generator nodes. So we're going to call it spiral generator group, and we're going to need some few input values, which is going to be integer. N turns stands for number of turns in our spiral. Integer points per turn. Then a couple of floats, which is height, and another float, radius. Okay, let's get started. So in this part will be a fair amount of math, some trigonometry, but just stick with me, and it's not that complicated. So first thing we need to do is to convert our degrees to radian. So full circle, 360 degrees, as you know, but we're gonna convert it for the sake of convenience. Now we need an overall amount of full circles, so we're gonna multiply our full circle radian to a number of turns, like this. Now we also need a total amount of points in our spiral. So we once again need to multiply our points per turn to number of turns. So here we got a total points total. Okay. Now we're gonna need to do some math. I'm not gonna go too technical on this, on every step, you know, on every math operation. Just trust me. you need to do this. We need to divide our overall, you know, amounts of turns in radians into our total points. So we get our, you know, like a chunk per point. So this value, we need to generate a float range, which is going to be length of our total points and step of our radians divided by amount of total points. And now math, a couple of math notes, which is first of all sinus, sine and cosine. And we're going to feed these to both of these nodes. Now I understand you might be already confused, but you know, just a minute, I'm going to show you what all of this does. Last step, to actually see the result, we need to combine these values into a vector value, which is kind of represents a 3D point in space in our case. So combine x and y, and this is actually not a big difference whether it's sine or cosine for x and y. And we need to output something out of our group. So this is going to be our points, I guess. And now we go to our main tree. We're going to create an instance of our spiral generator. We're going to set number of turns to 1 and point per turn something like, I don't know, let's go for 40. And now we need to show our 3D viewport and add a 3D viewer node. 3D viewer node is not creating anything, just lets you to see a points in space. So we're gonna color it green. So this is what our spiral generator group creating, a number of points distributed in circle. And you might say it doesn't look like a spiral. Yeah, of course, because it's flat, and a flat spiral is a circle. So we need to set a height for our points, and for this z value actually. So now we need to determine an height offset by each point. So once again, we're gonna need a basic math. We are going to divide our overall height of our spiral by total number of points, and this value, this is going to be our step for, I mean, as I said, per each point. So we have to generate another float range, points total, with a step of this value, and going to feed it to our z value. And as I modify height, you can see this turns into an actual, let me make it a little more, into an actual spiral. So simple as that. See, 5 minutes and we already have a nice little spiral generator. Now the problem is that all of these are actually just points. You know, I'm going to show you. Let's output it to an actual object, and we're going to call it wire guide mesh. Now another note, combine mesh data, vertex locations, and I'm going to hide this 3D viewer, and let's disable auto execution and set it to 3 changed, frame changed, and property changed. And as you can see now, vertex, now it's actual vertices that you can manipulate and do something with them in edit mode. But it's not a spiral yet. It's just a number of points floating around in space. We need to connect them with edges, right? So for this, we need edge indices, and we need to generate them based on our points. Okay, so we go, and for this, I'm gonna Control A, edge, create edge indices list. Oh, no, sorry, edge indices. Yeah, this one. And for this, we need to create integer range based on our total number of points. Once again, this is the most useful value here, with a step of 1. And I plug it in here. Edge indices are like pairs of values which are telling Blender that this point is connected with this point connected with this point, and so on. So if we output it and feed it to our combined mesh data, we see something strange like this, because unless we have second list of indices fed into create edge indices, it assumes that every edge connected with first edge. Once again, viewer node, as you can see, all of the vertices connected with first vertex. So what we need is simply need to fed the same list, the same integer range, simply shifted by 1. So we're gonna use our shift list -1, and voila. The only problem here is that because of shifted list, we have first edge connected with last edge, and this is really easy to fix simply by slicing last element out of edge indices list. So list slice -1, and fed it in here, and fed it in here, and voila, we have our spiral geometry. Just to keep things nice, clean, and well arranged, we're gonna use a frame node, and we're gonna call it edge indices. Jesus, my English spelling is pretty awful. Okay, so and just the last touch to make it nice and pretty, we need to. So here our z value. We just need to subtract half of a height from our overall height to shift an origin of our spiral in center of the spiral. So some more math. Just stick with me. Divide by 2. We're gonna divide our height by 2, and then subtract this value from actual height and feed it to z. Yes, it works. So yeah, let's go check it out here. So number of turns, number of points, right? Height. Oh yes, radius. I totally forgot about radius. Jesus. Yeah. So this is really simple. We need to combine a new vector from our float radius value, and we leave z at 1 because we only need radius for x and y, because our z value is set by height value. So Now we just multiply this vectors by this radius. And now it works perfectly. So our spiral generator works fine. And now the most complex math part is over. See, it wasn't that bad. Now we're going to create a Shrinkwrap geometry. So we need our Suzanne. I'm going to smooth it a little bit. And we need object input, which we are going to display in our animation nodes tab right here. And we're going to call it geometry input, right? I'm going to feed a Suzanne into here. We're going to strip it down to individual, separate to individual elements. Object mesh data here. World space and use modifiers gotta be checked. And just connect everything and immediately output it into another object, which is going to be called a Shrinkwrap geometry. Okay. And you can see that this is the same old Suzanne without any changes. So we're going to hide it from render view and also from viewport view. And now we have to set a couple of modifiers for our wire guide mesh. So Shrinkwrap to Shrinkwrap geometry, right? And then also we need corrective smooth only, and you don't want to tweak factor value. Instead, you want to tweak repeat values. But first, for Shrinkwrap modifier, keep above surface and slightly offset it, like 0.03 will be enough. And we can see now it goes through geometry, and we can fix that by increasing a number of points per turn in our spiral. As you can see now, it's starting to look something like we want. So you can tweak it. You can already see that, repeat factors just to make it more smooth or more rough. And just for the sake of convenience, we're not going to tweak wire guide mesh directly, but instead we're going to create a control object for it. So we're going to reset rotation, scale, and location, all the transformation for this wire guide mesh. For now, we're gonna set the height and radius to 1, height to 2 actually. And we're going to create an empty with a shape of cube, which we're going to call a spiral control. And we're going to parent our wire guide mesh to our spiral control. We're going to create a new trigger for animation nodes. 3 triggers actually. One trigger for location, one for rotation ailer, and the last one for scale. So I'm going to block this, and let's enable Shrinkwrap modifier again. And as we move our controller object or scale it, we can define our look easily. So this trigger we created allows us to tweak our control object and instantly see updates from animation nodes with no need for it to constantly run and spend our CPU resources. Now, when you create, let's say, a torus, right? You don't have to go to settings of your Shrinkwrap modifier here. You don't have to select this wire guide mesh. In fact, you might want to hide it from now on. We're just going to show it now for us to see what's going on here. And now you just set your new geometry, torus, and you instantly see a new result here. So, this is just a convenience. We're going to hide this. Okay, so now to an actual wire geometry. So in order to wrap our geometry around our object, we need a curve. So we need to turn this poly spiral, which is actually, there is no actual polys, but we need to turn it into a curve anyway. So yeah, mesh, object mesh data, use world space modifiers. So we're going to output this geometry to an object in Blender, modify it with well, modifiers, and we instantly get it right back with modified vertex locations. And what we're going to do is we need a spline from points, leave it as Bezier, and spline output object, and we're going to call it wire guide curve. Okay, and voila, we have our curve just in place of our actual spiral. From now on, we can hide our wire guide mesh. We won't need to see it anymore. And yeah, we're going to use this curve in our curve and array modifiers for our wire geometry. Okay, now to generating actual wire geometry. Let's just rearrange this just a bit. Okay, so let's go to a second layer, and there's a couple of ways to create a wire geometry. You can do it all by hands, or you can go fully procedural, and I'm going to show you how to do this. So we need a line generator. We're going to output to a new object, and this is going to be wire geometry, and this will be actually renderable. Mesh combine, vertices, vertex location, edge indices, and we got our line here, but we need it way smaller, something like minus 0.8 and plus 0.8, so it's gonna stick to center, maybe just a little bigger. Okay, now we need to turn it into a cylinder, so we're gonna use another node called edge to tube. So points, edge indices, bam, bam, polygon indices, yeah. So that's our tube, which is which looked like a prism. We don't need caps, and we need to increase our resolution just a bit. 8, 9 will be enough. And our radius, we need to decrease it fairly. Something like this. Oh, and steps. Yeah, we need to increase steps here. So yeah, this is our tube. This is our template for our wire. And yeah, there's a little problem here that none of these vertices are connected. Actually, these are separate kind of chunks. And we need to fix that. So in order to do this, we need to convert this mesh data to bmesh object. Create bmesh from mesh data. Then we need to remove bmesh, remove doubles. And we're going to feed a new bmesh object right here. So now, as you can see, all the geometry is connected. Last thing we need to do is to shade this object smooth. Okay, now to modifier part. So we need to displace this by z-axis just a tiny notch, maybe even smaller, like 0.3, maybe even 0.2. Yeah. Then we need to create an array with relative offset of 1 by z-axis, like this. And finally, we need to twist it. Simple deform modifier. But we need to set the axis origin in order for it to twist in correct manner. So we're going to create another empty. We're going to call it twist origin. And we're going to set it right here. And we need to rotate its y-axis, global y, by 90 degrees. And you can already see it's twisting, and we need to just set it to 360 degrees, like this. Now when I said this is the final modifier, I lied. Actually, we need a few more. Another array modifier with merge enabled, so you can already see it looks like a wire now. But we need to set the fit type to fit curve, and this is where we're going to set our wire guide curve actually. So whenever we change settings in our spiral generator, it's going to update our wire guide curve, and our wire geometry is going to properly fit the length of it. So yeah, fit curve, yes it is. And the last, truly last modifier is curve, and the wire guide curve once again. An unexpected jump cut, guys. I just stumbled across a little trouble here. I forgot to mention that you have to set the radius of the spline from points in order to get a proper radius for your generated wire. So it was set to something like this, and I got this really tiny, whiny wire, and I spent a good amount of time figuring out why is this so. So then I just set it to 1, and this is just another bit of freedom to control your overall look of your wire here. So let's set it something like this. Okay, so as you can see, it's pretty dynamic here. Yeah, it works fine. Now that's kind of it for the first part, I guess. We got our wire set up, and once again, let's create another object. Let's let it be torus 01. Is that a torus 0? Oh yeah. Works as a charm. Yeah. So in the second part, I'm going to show you how to create and distribute light bulbs across our spline here. Oh, and of course, quick announcement, guys. If you're watching this on my old YouTube channel, which is this one, this will be actually the last tutorial video I put up here. And I want to welcome you on my new channel called Blenderust. And the second part will be there. So subscribe to the new channel, and also check out my brand new website blog, where I put up some hopefully interesting posts about my job, compositing, motion graphics and stuff, where you can, kind of leave comments and communicate with me. And also my new Twitter account and Facebook public. So I'll see you there. Subscribe, register, and let's stay connected, guys. So second part coming up. Thank you for watching, and happy blending and happy holidays, guys.